Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence and welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the newest hybrids by the company Duo Fragrances. And this one is called Best 22 Shades of Citrus. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin the review, I do want to mention that if you like fragrance reviews, any sort of fragrance related video here on this platform, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All you have to do is click that red button in the corner. So this way, whenever I do review upcoming releases, or if I do top 10 lists or whatever giveaways, this content will get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future uploads. And another thing that I want to disclose as well is that this bottle was actually sent to me for review by the company. But of course, I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. And another thing that I've mentioned in previous videos as well is that I actually happen to be on Duo Fragrances press list. So whenever there is a new release, if it's something that is of interest to me, if it's something that maybe I know the fragrance that it's an inspiration of and I own it and I like the way that it smells and I would like to acquire Duo's version of it, I always put in that request. And Massam, the CEO slash company owner slash perfumer, is always really kind, and he takes very good care of me. So thank you so much for sending this to me, Massam, and I'm happy to be reviewing it on my channel today. So the fragrance is called Best 22 Shades of Citrus, and for those of you who don't know, one of the things that the Duo brand has been doing a lot lately, and I actually have another one of their fragrances here, which is an example of this, is they have been putting out hybrid fragrances, which basically means they have a few chemists look at the composition of existing fragrances and they create a hybrid of those fragrances. And so in the case of this one, it features a Byredo, but it also features, I believe, Celebration by Royal Crown, which is a really amazing citrus mint fragrance, and I'm going to be getting myself a bottle of that, despite how expensive it is. In the case of this one, 22 Shades of Citrus is their version of Bergamot 22 by Le Labo, and the other fragrance that is also hybridized in this fragrance is called Best Citrus Ever, if I'm not mistaken, and that is their version of Henri Jacques Irois, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is an iris-based fragrance that is supposed to be like the holy grail iris fragrance, if I'm not mistaken. And as a matter of fact, 10 milliliters of it sells for 500 pounds, which I think for anybody, that would be beyond anybody's price range. And it's certainly not an amount of money that I feel comfortable paying. So what they did here is they took the best qualities from both of those fragrances. You have a little bit of that super natural and organic smelling iris, you have a touch of that lavender in there, but then you also have this combination of all of these different citrus ingredients. You have lemon, lemon leaf, petitgrain, bergamot, grapefruit, orange, neroli. There is a ton of citrus in here. And of course, you can kind of tell by taking a look at the bottle because it has all of these different citrus fruits on it. And of course, when you're thinking about the ideal summer scent, you want to go with something that is very heavy on the citrus. Sometimes you want to change a pace, so you might go for something that's a little bit more oceanic or ozonic or aquatic, or maybe even something that has like the salty marine vibe. But I definitely love my citrus fragrances. I know they're not as deep and complex and rich as some of the more resinous and woodsy and incensey fragrances that I have in my collection that I've reviewed on this channel, but I do love my citrus fragrances. And this is one of the easiest ones to wear, and it's also one of the most appealing and addictive ones to wear, and it's also going for a very good price. Keeping in mind the fact that this is their hybrid version of two fragrances that are significantly more expensive. And when you compare 10 milliliters for 500 pounds versus what Duo's putting out for their version, it really is a no-brainer. So anyways, I'm excited to tell you more about the smell, how it transforms on my skin, what I perceive from the top to the base, but let's start things off with the presentation. So here is the box that the fragrance comes in. The concentration is written on the side. The ingredient, size, and concentration, as well as the made-in information, is written on the back. The inside of the box has this little blurb on the left, and the bottle sits in there on the right. And here's the bottle for this fragrance. Just has a ton of different fruits on the front here. You have lime and lemon and orange, and I think it pretty accurately symbolizes what the fragrance is going to smell like. You have the name of the fragrance written on the spine. The cap for this fragrance does click into place very securely. You can pick this one up from the cap. And the distribution on the atomizer is nice and wide. Let's continue with the smell. So the opening of this fragrance, obviously, you're gonna get the namesake of the original fragrance, which is Bergamot. So 22 Shades of Citrus is their version of Bergamot 22 by Le Labo. And I also own that one. I believe I even covered it on this channel a few years ago, and I still wear that fragrance to this day. It's actually one of the fragrances that I like to take with me on vacation. So I take that, I take their version of a Creed fragrance, Pure White Cologne, and several other inspirations of fragrances that are very sort of light and citrusy and minty. And this one definitely opens up with that bergamot note. So you're gonna get the namesake of the original in here, this really bright, fresh, energetic bergamot. You have the flesh, you have the rind, you have the peel. I mean, it's the complete picture that you're getting from this. And so I think in order for a hybrid like this to work, a couple different things need to be set in motion. One, you need to make sure that your version of this fragrance is an accurate interpretation. And I feel like when I do smell this, I am actually smelling Bergamot 22. And sometimes when I wear 22 Shades of Citrus, which is their clone or their inspired expression of Bergamot 22, sometimes I feel like I'm wearing the real thing. And so one, it's about making sure that you create an inspiration that is so close to the original. And two, it's about achieving the right balance between the two fragrances that you're trying to hybridize or marry in this composition. And I feel like these two fragrances work in concert with one another so well because you have this really smooth and fresh iris note. And whenever you think of florals, sometimes florals can be kind of sharp and heady, but other times they can be very sort of tranquil and clean, and they add this sort of smooth texture to the fragrance. And I really believe that that's what's happening here with the iris note. So when you think of fragrances like gardenia or jasmine or iris, these clean, smooth white florals, they really just make the fragrance fresher. And I feel like they elevate those more volatile top notes, which is precisely what's happening in here. I get a nice touch of that lemon in here as well. I don't get anything about it that is overly tart, so I can't really say I'm picking up on a lot of grapefruit. And in terms of the orange blossom that's in here, it's not as orangey as it is bergamoty. I'm just inventing words here, but really I get a really luscious, bright and energizing bergamot in the opening. And you also have this hint of iris in there with like a little touch of lavender, which is really, really cool. The lavender doesn't smell like a barbershop fragrance at all. It really doesn't give a fougere vibe at all in this fragrance. Most of what you're gonna get is the citrus compounded with those clean white florals in the mid. And I know we have the vanilla and we have some amber going on in the base as well. Perhaps there's this ever so slight touch of sweetness in the dry down, but it's really to add some dimension to the fragrance. It's not enough to constitute its own unique separate stage in the development of the fragrance. You know, when we're looking at or discussing a fragrance's non-linearity, we're thinking about, okay, this is the distinct opening and these are the notes that characterize it or constitute that aroma profile that you get in the opening. And then you have this clear segue from that bright citrus to the florals. In the base, it doesn't feel like it's you know, distinct opening or distinct episode in the dry down that you can look at or you can smell and say, oh yeah, I see that there's something sort of independent going on in here. That's really not what I'm getting. I think the cohesion and the combination of all of those ingredients is really, really nice. But I do think that the one ingredient from the Henry Jacques fragrance that really stands out in comparison to, you know, the way that it's used in this hybrid is the iris. And it's such a well done iris, I gotta be honest with you guys. And I think that, you know, another hybrid from Dua, they really knocked it out of the park. They have a lot of fantastic fragrances for the summertime. One of them, I know it sounds like a Harry Potter spell, Pretiosum Vetiverum. And it's their version of like a really clean, like a squeaky clean soapy vetiver. It's amazing. They also have another original fragrance called Flagship, which I absolutely love. Also contains bergamot. But in the case of this one, this is a fragrance where you can kind of smell you can very well smell, I should say, the fragrances after which it's modeled, but it does it in a way that there is this level of uniqueness about it, and at least you can enjoy it and feel like I'm experiencing something new today. I'm smelling something that perhaps I've smelled little snippets of in the past, but the complete picture is a picture that you haven't seen before, and I think that's always really, really cool of the hybrids that the Duo brand puts out. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I would say it's unique to an extent, right? So obviously they're taking inspiration from two fragrances that are already in existence, but they are adding their own slight little modification to it by extracting certain ingredients from each one and then sort of combining them in a laboratory to create their own unique fragrance, but it does inevitably take inspiration from other more established niche fragrances. And in this case, it just so happens that one of them is 500 pounds for 1/3 of an ounce, which is, I mean, quite startling. I would never pay that much. And so to have the opportunity to experience it in such a way, I think is pretty cool. In terms of the overall smell, incredibly pleasant. You are not going to offend anybody with this fragrance. It just smells very smooth, very subtle, and I love the way that it makes me feel when I put it on. I feel like if I am gonna go out there on a really, really hot day, I do want something that bursts off the skin, something that's loud, something that has an ample amount of citrus, and this fragrance totally does that, so I really appreciate it. In terms of the longevity, expect about 7 hours. Projection on this one is fantastic for the first 2 to 2.5 hours. You guys know that the loudest part of the fragrance is that citrus that you're gonna get in the opening, and there are, I should say, 5 to 6 different types of citrus ingredients in this fragrance. So you are going to get that loud burst in the opening, that punch of an opening, and you are gonna get noticed. So the projection for the first 2 to 2.5 hours, quite loud, doesn't really become a skin scent until about that 6-hour mark. And so very well done as far as the performance is concerned. Incredibly versatile. I do find this fragrance to be a unisex release. I think that it is the type of fragrance that I would feel inclined to wear in the summertime. You know, I don't really wear a citrus dominated fragrance in the winter unless I know I'm gonna be in a climate controlled environment for the majority of that day, 90% of that day. But again, these are just recommendations. Spend your money as you would like. And again, perfectly unisex. Anybody of any age can wear this one as well. The presentation on this one, I think this is probably one of the easiest to digest presentations. You see the citrus fruit on it, you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to smell like. My final verdict on this fragrance is, in the case of their hybrids, I feel like this one does the job so remarkably well. And I think another thing too is that they have selected two fragrances that resonate with one another. I think it would have been much more of a dichotomy or a contrast or a disparity if they were to select two completely different genres of fragrance and try to meld them together. But I think in the case of this fragrance, these two actually have that olfactory similarity. And so I would imagine that the fusion of the two was a bit more seamless, and I love wearing this one. And I'm certainly gonna be wearing this a lot more in the coming months. I also am trying to think of a way to include it in a list, but I just don't know where to include it. You know, it's not a designer fragrance, and then I also have a hard time really calling it a niche fragrance, even though the Duo brand focuses specifically on creating fragrances. So I guess by definition it is niche. But anyway, leave that up to me. I'll do my thought and I'll give it its due diligence. But I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you took something of value from this review. If you did, please do consider subscribing to this channel by clicking that red button in the corner. And also, please don't forget to enable notifications by clicking on the bell icon. This way, whenever I do upload future videos, it'll get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future uploads. And of course, that includes fragrance reviews just like this, but also top 10 videos, giveaways, unboxings, special guests, interviews, and a lot more. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. See you soon. Bye.